When I was 19, I hit a knot. Or more honestly, I created a tangled mess. Instead of working to untangle it, I just cut it off and left. I moved. I changed my city on Facebook. I tried to start over, but I didn't have much to start over with. Just a few cut pieces. So when the new boyfriend in the new city wants to know more about me, or the new job I want wants to know my employment history, I panic. And before long, I've just got another tangled mess. Running doesn't resolve what is unresolved inside of us. It can't. But I probably would have kept running if I hadn't found a place that I wanted to stop, or someone I wanted to stop for. For Jim, well, Jim is like one really long ball of yarn. He's really consistent. He's never cut or run from anything. He's patient. He's kind. He's thorough. It was his mother. His mother's amazing too. His mother that taught me to knit. Not that I was dying to learn to knit, but one night after dinner, she asked me if I wanted to learn. I kind of felt bad turning her down, so I said sure. But it was knitting that gave me the picture of my pattern, of just the ways in relationships or when things got hard that I would just run away from the tangle or cut it and leave it. It's interesting, I had never understood the value of a long skein of yarn, because you can't make anything beautiful with a bunch of cut pieces. So I know I'll go home again soon and try to untangle some of the messes that I've made. But then I'll come back here. And I'll come back more as a whole person. I'm making this scarf for Jim because for me it represents the value of the whole ball of yarn. He won't understand what it means, but I will. And for the first time in my life, I might be able to give someone the real gift, the gift of myself, my whole self. That's kind of cool.
The entire Old Testament and New Testament is written with one theme in mind: to point us to Jesus. All of its people, on all of its pages, is centered around teaching us how God relates to us through his son Jesus. The story of Abram, Hagar, Sarah, no different. In fact, did you know that their story finds itself in the New Testament as well? When Paul is teaching us in Galatians chapter 4:28, "And you, dear brothers and sisters, are children of the promise, just like Isaac. But you are now being persecuted by those who want to keep the law, just as Ishmael, the child born by human effort, persecuted Isaac, the child born by the power of the Spirit." But what do the scriptures say about that? "Get rid of the slave and her son, for the son of the slave woman will not share the inheritance with the free woman's son. So, dear brothers and sisters, we are not children of the slave woman. We are children of the free woman." Now, this is an allegory that Paul is using to teach us about the freedom versus slavery that we have in our heart, about the freedom that is offered to us through Jesus. And he is asking us simply this: do you relate to God through position or promise? You see, Isaac is the son of Abraham and Sarah, the son born by no human effort, the son born on promise, trusting God, even if it was 10 years later. But Ishmael was a son born through Abraham and Hagar, the son born of human effort, the son born as two humans decided to be their own God. God is using this story to teach us about the freedom of our own heart. Are you finally and fully accepted in Jesus? This is freedom, to know this and to respond to everything in our life from this place of acceptance, knowing that there is nothing that you have done, nothing that you are doing, and nothing that you will do that could ever compromise this promise in your life. This is the great lesson of the story in both Genesis and Galatians. Hagar would be a slave by circumstance for the rest of her life, but she could be free in her heart. The first time that we meet Hagar, she's running away. The second time we meet Hagar, she has been sent away. Each time, God does not fail to meet her. The second time we see her, specifically, God speaks right to the bondage in her heart. In Genesis chapter 21, verse 17, he says simply this to her: Hagar, what is wrong? Do not be afraid. I want you to notice that God gives her one statement and one question. Hagar, what is wrong? Question. Do not be afraid. Statement. At the root of all of our slavery, our bondage, is fear. But not just any fear, a very specific fear. The fear of being rejected. Rejection is this feeling that we are not fully accepted even on our worst day, which means that we are only left to earn someone's love and acceptance. God wants us to know that there's no earning. We need to ask ourselves, what are we scared of? What's the worst thing that could happen to us? Are we scared of our honest story? Are we scared of being vulnerable? Are we scared of stepping out in something new because it's unknown? Are we scared of just being regular? Just being a regular woman, doing regular things like the laundry and picking the kids up from school? I want to challenge you that the fear that we are struggling with is not the thing itself, but the fear of the rejection that might happen if we do it. God does not want us to make peace with our bondage. So sometimes He will draw us in the wilderness to deal with it right then and there. And He will ask our heart the same questions that He does for Hagar. What is wrong? I think this question shows us the very nature of God, how compassionate He is, how loving He is. As my husband Justin and I were restoring our marriage and rebuilding our marriage after years of infidelity, we entered a wilderness season of our life for sure. We felt very isolated and alone. Sometimes, like Hagar, I would run to this place to get away from people. Sometimes I would feel like I was just kicked into this place from other people. Nevertheless, this was the time, this wilderness, where God would ask me over and over, what is wrong? What is wrong? He wanted me to think back, not just about what I had done, but why I had done it. Not just that I had cheated on my husband. Why had I cheated on my husband? Where in my heart had I gone to get to this place as a believer, as a Christian? Over months, almost a year in the wilderness with Him, I began to look at this place. Why did I feel this way? The Lord is so patient, by the way. So tender, so sweet. He wants to validate our feelings as present tense, but make sure that we know the truth from a lie. Because He wants us to live in freedom, and He wanted me to live in freedom. He knew that my entire life, from my childhood through my teen years into my young adulthood, I had dealt so recklessly with the fear of being rejected. He knew that this was a deep-seated place of bondage and fear in my heart. He wanted me to be free of it. And so he continued to press, what is wrong? What is wrong? So that I would finally ask the question, why? For years, I'd just been looking at the what? My behaviors, what I was doing. But the freedom was found in the why. He had already answered my question before I asked it. Do not fear. Do not fear. Do not fear. I could feel him saying this over and over to me as I grew in strength inside. I grew in confidence as I began to believe over and over and over that I was fully and finally accepted in him. In him, I had no condemnation, no shame. And when I knew that, when I believed that, who was there to be scared of? I could go back into the grocery store. I could go back to the post office, and I didn't have to hang my head or cower to anyone. It was a sweet, sweet moment of grace that washed over me because of the finished work that Jesus had done in my life. Finally, fully finished, accepted in him. I know the feeling all too well of a fear that grips our hearts so deeply that it keeps us enslaved and in bondage, even as a free person by right. Women are not too accepting of someone wearing a scarlet letter. And as my husband and I were being restored and redeemed from the season of infidelity, I found myself in a wilderness with God, much like Hagar. Rejection is so hard to discern because it's inside our heart. It's internal. If we scrape our knee, we know that we need to get medicine on it. We need to put a bandage on it. It takes time to heal. We can see all of those things. But a wound of the heart, well, we can be hemorrhaging and we don't even realize it. And the closer we are in relationship to someone, the deeper the wound goes. I want us to think about the relationship between Hagar and Sarah. They had to be close. I mean, they shared the same house. They shared meals together. They shared conversation. For heaven's sakes, they shared the same man. So they both equally shared the fear of not being accepted. This deep fear that kept them both in bondage. The problem with rejection is we can push these experiences and these moments that we've had over the course of our life deep into our subconscious and never deal with them. Over time, they begin to fracture us on the inside, but also on the outside. Rejection, or the fear of rejection, it can divide us from these really meaningful relationships in our life. This is a powerful statement. The very relationships who have the potential and the power to draw us in are also the very ones that so often push us out. And this is right where Satan gets the upper hand. Any place where our relationships are fragmented or divided, he loves when we withdraw from people because we're scared of them. He knows that the more time we spend disconnecting from one another, the more time he gets with us. And he repeats this same lie in 1,000 different ways. Did God really say? Hagar, Sarah, did God really say that a child would give you value? Did God really say that he would bring you a family and acceptance and freedom? Fear of rejection in our life will allow men to have the power that only God should. This causes extreme living in our life. In this extreme living, we think the always and never language. I will never be enough. I will always be misunderstood. Here's the problem with extreme living. When we live there, there is no room for grace with others, with ourselves. But rejection, at the heart of it, is a breach of emotional trust. It really is not about humans at all. It's what we think of God. It's us asking God, are you really there for me? Can I really trust you? Are you really good enough? Are you really forgiving enough to accept me on my worst days? Grace is the only substance strong enough to bridge the gap between all of these extreme versions between us and God, between us and man. Jesus. This is why Jesus, from beginning to end, Genesis to Revelation, pointing us to this one moment in history in Luke chapter 4, where Jesus says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovering of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." Can't you just hear it all? Sarah, you can trust me. My promise will be fulfilled. Hagar, you are free. Maybe not by external circumstance, but in here, there is freedom for you in your heart, in your mind, in your soul. And I'm going to give both of you sons. Favor will be on you. In grace, there is no room for fear, because grace accepts us right where we are. In Jesus, finally, fully accepted in Him. And we are set free as 21st century women the same way that Hagar and Sarah would be set free, through the grace and love of Jesus Christ.